What is going on, you beautiful beasts? Today, gonna learn how to use the weirdest gun in CSGO. And no, we're not talking about M249, because nobody should be buying it. We're talking about Deagle. Why is it the weirdest gun? Well, because it's pretty powerful, but it's really hard to use. So, I prepared a few tips for you on how to get better at Deagle. And while practice is what you have to do to get better with any gun, I think there is a better way. And I mean, if you incorporate those few tips into your routine, you can get better at Deagle and therefore at the game in general. So let's take a look.
Alright guys, so let's get to the 10 tips on how to play with a Deagle. First of all, try playing with a Deagle, and what I mean by trying is log on to a Deathmatch server and try running around when you get all these guns against you. It's easier to play with bots, but when there are real people spawning everywhere with ops, AKs, it gets a little bit harder. So just see how good you are with Deagle. Most likely, you'll suck just like most people do at the beginning. What do you do now that you realize that you're not good with a Deagle, even though it's one of the most glorified guns in CSGO? Well, you move on to step 2 that I've prepared for you. Step number 2 is learning the spray pattern, you know? Similar to AK and M4, Deagle has a very easy spray pattern. Deagle does not have a spray pattern. The more you shoot, the worse it gets. And I mean, there is no way to predict it, and the best way is just to go slow with the gun. Just to aim and then shoot. If you have to shoot 2 times, there is a high chance you'll miss the second shot. Unless the enemy is very close to you, which if the person has the AK, you're dead already. But if they don't know the spray patterns, you got a chance. You got a better chance than if you had a Glock, you know? Anyways, now you realize that you're not good with Deagle, there's no spray pattern you need to learn, you could learn to get better. What do? Well, the answer is simple. Practice. However, I strongly advise you not to join a competitive server and decide to go all rounds with a Deagle, because that's a way to get reported for being a shit player, getting kicked. I don't know, just don't practice when the ranks are at stake, because a lot of people take them very seriously. And I mean, it's just disrespectful, right? So that leads us to tip number 3. Where do I practice then? Well, luckily for you, CSGO community is very generous, and there are a ton of maps, workshop maps that you can play to get better with any gun, but in this case with a Deagle. But before playing with his character models, I suggest practicing with a few targets. So there's a great map that I'm gonna link to down below in the description, by the way. So you know, you'll get to play at your own pace, you set your own distances, you play around until you feel comfortable. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about the map right now. So go ahead, grab yourself a gun, you know? No, you don't need this shitty 5.7, just grab a Deagle, like a real man. And you know, you can set your settings to anything you'd like. You can choose the training mode, the target properties, which include size, color, and shots to kill, which is quite pointless with the Deagle, but anyways. You get the target types, and you get a bunch of help buttons that can modify how often the targets show up and everything. So now let's take a look. So as you can see, it's a pretty simple exercise, right? But if you're used to spraying with AK, whatever is moving, it's much better for your aim. You get to learn things. Now, you could go to any level, and it can be a good example, because it won't always be a close battle, right? And you don't want one if there's a person with a shotgun or a rifle, an SMG, you'll likely lose. So Deagle is really good at shooting targets far away and still penetrating the armor, and you're actually very likely to get a headshot as well. So you gotta use this to your advantage. If you can do this, you can stand against players with M4s maybe. You know, not oppers. Oppers are crazy. And that's a whole other rant topic, you know? Once you're feeling more comfortable with just shooting while standing, try moving a little bit, because that messes up with your spray pattern, and essentially you still have to slow down. It will take a few, like, milliseconds. So it makes it a little more interesting for you once you get a little bit of experience of just moving your crosshair back and forth, right? It's a great exercise, and you can increase the number of shots from 25 to 999, I think, so it can be an indefinite exercise essentially, right? So now let's go to level 4 and just do the same thing. I just wanted to show you that the recovery time is actually much shorter when you squat. However, in this case, with this map, it's not gonna make a big difference because you simply only have so much time, so there is a very light chance that you'll get time to recover your spray pattern. Anyways, that's not an issue. Yeah, it's actually funny, even if you grab Negev, it's not that easy. You'd think the laser beam gun would be the easiest gun to use in the game, and maybe if it depended on the number of squares on the screen, you'd be good, but yeah, it's not that easy to control Negev spray pattern in this case either, so I think Deagle will do a good job helping you here. Anyways, now let's move to the new map, which is to actually looking at player models, because their heads are a little bit smaller than the red square, right? So you'll have to try a little bit harder. And here, let's just grab a Deagle real quick. Where is it? Not a revolver. Nice. Now you could just try playing around, and I suggest if you're actually practicing and not just hanging out, I suggest closing the gate, or whatever it's called, just raising everything so the enemies are actually in front of you. Let's take a look how that works. Oh, you see? Can't even do that. Jesus. So it makes it a little bit easier. Now you have a... Now you don't have to turn back and forth and rotate 360. I mean, just practice, right? So stand still and try to hit the players who are far away from you, who are closer to you. It gets you better awareness skin-wise in the game, you know? And you can do this, you know, for 20 minutes a day, whatever, maybe 10 minutes a day even. And I can assure you, in a month, your skills with the Deagle will increase tremendously. Aim-wise, right? Not game sense-wise, because we're not playing a deathmatch, we're not playing scrimmage maps or anything. So, aim-wise, it will get much, much better. Now that you feel comfortable playing this way, let's just open the second part of the arena, so you can kinda get a little bit better at, you know, turning 90 degrees. Maybe once you feel comfortable with that, you could be turning 180 degrees. Cause, you know, a lot of the times I notice, and I mean it happens to me too, that if somebody's shooting you from the back, a lot of the times you would just accept it, and like, if you don't find a cover, you just die. And I mean, it's hard to bounce back, but it's possible. And the more you practice, essentially, the better you get. So I'm not sure how good a Deagle will do in this case. I'm sure it will do just fine. But yeah, little 45 degree rotations, 90 degree rotations will get you better, especially at hitting targets far away, because you can, because you got a Deagle, dog. And of course, if you'd like, you could just try moving around, try squatting, try doing anything you can to essentially understand how Deagle works. And, you know, if you want, you can get an AK for the sake of it and just see how much easier it is with an AK. That just shows that it's much harder to use a Deagle against guns like M4, AK, and all. Like, it's not simple. And even when you got an AK, if you'll be playing against somebody with a Deagle, how much easier it will be to win. And that's why you should try to get all advantage you can. Alright guys, now let's move on to step number 5. Yeah, I didn't say that was step number 4, but that was step number 4. And I mean tip number 4. I'm just getting a little carried away. Don't worry about it. Okay, so I'm gonna keep the next tip, tip number 5, a little bit little short, you know, because the only change in it is move to the moving targets. Because it's a lot easier when you, even when there are a lot of them and they're in the distance, it's a lot easier when they just stand, which never ever happens in real game. So this won't really develop your game sense, but it will improve your movements a million times, because you're actually trying to predict where the enemy is moving. And with these terrorists running back and forth, and they're not just moving in one direction. A lot of the time they go forward, then they move left, then they move right. They're trying to confuse you. So that's a good way to learn. And while real players will likely be a little bit better at this, not even always, but it's a good practice with moving targets, because you'll notice how much harder it actually is to get to kill the moving targets. And you may even, if you miss a headshot and you get a body shot, you can try hit them second time, and that's when you kind of feel the recovery time, which is what, 0.8 seconds when standing and like half of that when crouching. So you'll get to actually feel that, because you hit the enemy once, now the enemy moved completely, and it makes it a lot more interesting, but considerably harder. So yeah, keep your goal getting, I don't know, 100 kills with a Deagle. Just because it's not a deathmatch and you don't really get killed, maybe increase this number to 200 as you get better at it. And that's about it. Just keep practicing and soon you'll get used to it more. So unlike any other pistol, Deagle takes time to recover, but it makes up for it with a huge punch. I mean, when you get to kill terrorists with 2 body shots, it still feels nice, you know? And if somebody else lit the person, or lit a couple people, you can end both of them without trying to go for a headshot. So that's when the communication of your team when playing competitive comes in play, but that's for another video, guys. Okay, now that you've learned that there is no recoil pattern, you will kind of get the idea of how to shoot, you're getting better at shooting terrorists while they're moving, you know? It's a good idea to start with a deathmatch, where people are considerably unpredictable, but it's not a competitive where the entire game must be at stake because you bought a Deagle instead of an AK, you know? So deathmatch is pretty simple and it actually shows you how Deagle is good, but it can be weak against guns like AKs and M4s and OPs, as I've said before. So your bet here is to just run around and try to get as many kills as you can. You still get an advantage because it's a pistol, as opposed to people can't really run and gun with an AK or with an op even. So you get a little bit of an advantage. You can run and gun, but you have more of that recovery time. You have more. You're faster too, you know. Just do it, man. And you know, soon people will be like, oh, this guy's running with an AK. Oh, with a Deagle. And they'll be like, well, I'm gonna play with Deagle too. And it happens to me. So we had like 4 people playing with Deagles, and you're trying to see whether they use some other techniques, how they're better at this. You learn to time your shots more, because it's much easier when you know the enemy won't get you. In the previous maps where you just stand, even though they're moving, you know that they're not gonna kill you, unless you come close to an edge and get knifed. In this map, essentially your skill gets tested a little bit more. At least for me personally, I felt like it was much easier to not spam my Deagle when I was on the training maps, but then when there's an enemy shooting at me, I'm trying to shoot him faster before he or she kills me, right? So that's what makes a big difference when it comes to playing with real players. Even if you were to play with bots, it's not the same. So deathmatch, there is nothing at stake, right? You only get the game experience, so might as well practice a deathmatch. If you feel like you're getting completely destroyed, which doesn't happen, there are always players worse than you in deathmatch, then you can move back to the workshop maps. But deathmatch is a pretty good place, and it's actually a good place to warm up before a comp match. You know, just get yourself, I don't know, 50 kills, 100 kills. Once you get better, you can move to 100, because otherwise it's gonna take an hour, right? So it's definitely a good idea to start with a deathmatch. Now that you've mastered deathmatch, whatever, maybe not master, but you've warmed up, you got the idea, you're getting better and better in this, what else, right? The next step you think should be casual, because, you know, it just comes naturally. Well, that's not really a good case in my personal opinion, right? Because there are 10 enemies versus 10 enemies or so, and it just comes to the point where like money is not a problem, you get armor in every round. So if you're really intimidated by competitive and scrimmage maps, I guess you could do that. However, it doesn't really give you the feel for the game. You don't get the game sense, just because there are 10 terrorists pushing A at the same time, which is honestly unrealistic. So you could play casual, but I suggest instead to play scrimmage maps. I know there are only, 3 scrimmage maps, and the only decent one right now is a Mirage, in my opinion, because I don't really feel like playing Breach or Studio. Once again, my personal opinion, but pick any scrimmage map that you like and just queue for it. While it may take forever to play, because the average waiting time is over 5 minutes, which is outrageous, it's worth it, especially if you're doing this more to practice than to win, right? However, don't just buy a Deagle in every round, right? You still feel kind of responsible for the team well-being, but anyways, yeah. Tip number 7, pick the scrimmage maps, and let's get to actual practicing your game sense. So every map in CSGO has a lot of walls, and some of those walls are wall bangable, which means, you know, you should try using the wall bang with a Deagle. Why? Because it's actually better at wall banging than an AK. So if the enemy hides behind the box in Dust 2 or behind the mid doors, right? You could still shoot the person and deal them up to 30 damage, which is which is not bad. And if they're lit already, you can potentially have a chance to kill them, and if not, you lit them even more, then your teammates can pick them up. So in my case, I was playing Mirage, and there are a ton of wall-bangable plays at A bomb site, at B bomb site, mid, I guess, they're a little bit sniper's nest, like there's a ton of stuff you can do. So just try it out, you know, in the actual game. Now, moving to tip number 9 is Deagle is a good gun for an eco round, right? So I always say that eco should be an SMG round, but if an enemy has an AK and they're shooting you from far away, there is nothing you can do with your SMG or shotgun, right? So unless you know which side they're going to go on, it's a lot of the time it's a good idea and a cheaper idea to buy a Kevlar and a Deagle as opposed to buying an SMG or shotgun. A lot of the time, if you only kill one person, so one person on the enemy team with a gun, you can pick it up and you can just keep going with the same Deagle. So instead of throwing out an SMG and picking up that AK, you can have an AK and a Deagle now, which is not a bad idea. And then eco round, if you happen to win, if you're lucky enough to win it, it can turn the game around, essentially, you know? So it depends on the situation, and it depends on what guns your enemy is having, which you should have some idea about, depending on the previous round. But Deagle on an eco round is not a bad idea. You can grab a 5.7 if you're gonna be pushing, but if you're gonna be holding as a CT, or if you're gonna go mid on Mirage as a T, Deagle can do a great job, you know? Okay, finally. Well, this tip number 10 is more of a don't do this, but let's take a look. So essentially the first round is a pistol round, and you think, well, Deagle is so powerful, I might as well buy it and win every pistol round. Well, that's not quite the case, right? If the terrorists are pushing through, well, I'm gonna give an example, through apps on Mirage, what are you gonna do with your Deagle? You may kill one person, you may kill 2 people, but they can also headshot you, no problem, because guess what? First round you don't have a helmet, which means you have essentially failed to be smart with money, and you failed your team because you died, because you thought, yeah, Deagle is a good gun, while let's say on the CT team you have a perfect USPS, which also headshots everybody from quite far away. So just keep that in mind. Deagle is an amazing gun, but it's not perfect. So it's good for a variety of cases, but it's not good for everything. Just keep that in mind, guys. There is no need to buy Deagle every round. If you want to get an op and a Deagle, perfect, right? If you want to, but be mindful, you're going to be spending over $5,000. So with armor and everything, it's going to be close to $7,000. And if you get shot, you're dead, you just wasted $7,000. And that's a big loss for your team. It's a good idea, but just be mindful of things like that. And don't waste your money on a Deagle if you know that you're not gonna need it. For example, if you buy an AK or an SG on a T side or an M4 AUG on the CT side, more often than not, you're not gonna need a Deagle when you're trying to get the enemy, right? Unless you have to reload, then you can use a Deagle, and there are enemies around you, you can use a Deagle. But more often than not, you'll either get shot before you get to use a Deagle before you run out of 30 bullets, or you'll win before that. So a lot of the time, there are better guns to use, but when there's a need for a Deagle, Deagle can prove the best pistol, if you know how to use it properly. And of course, I hope these tips have helped you a little bit. I'm gonna leave the links to the maps that I've showed down below in the description, so check them out, you know, might as well practice a little bit. And that's about it, guys.
Alright guys, if you have enjoyed the video, I'm sure you've learned something new, especially if you're a beginner player. You know, like our video if you liked it. If you like our channel in general, we haven't been posting a lot of tutorials because we've been documenting shattered web operations, but you know, just check them out. If you like them, subscribe to our channel. If you have a question about a Deagle, about anything else, leave it in the comments down below and, you know, we'll do our best to answer it. Thank you very much. Don't forget to always follow your instinct. And have a wonderful day, you beasts.
Hey, you, I don't like a girlfriend. No way, I think you need a new one. Hey, you, I don't like a girlfriend. Nah.